Today is Friday, June 5th, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. A shocking admission from a YouTuber about their unborn child with Down syndrome. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating if you haven't done so already. We'd appreciate that. You can send us your thoughts as well. Quick Start Podcast at cbn.org. Glad you're here with us. We're here every weekday morning, bright and early, getting through the news of the day. With me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell. Billy, on the focus story, a Christian singer recently revealed a miracle she experienced.
Yeah, this is a fascinating story. Her name is Zahriya Zachary, and it's a pretty powerful story, so we'll get into that today.
All right, looking forward to the details on that. Also on the main thing, a Russian missile strike hits a church in Kyiv as Moscow launches a huge attack, one of the bigger ones since the war started. George Thomas has more on that coming up on the main thing. I want to tell you about our sponsor this half hour, Christian Solidarity International. And by now you are well familiar with Christian Solidarity International, CSI, and the work they're doing, helping persecuted Christians in need. So much going on around the globe, and Christians everywhere are just experiencing insane levels of persecution. Nigeria is probably the biggest spot right now. I think 7 out of every 10 Christians who have been killed in the last year or so and been persecuted against, that's happened in Nigeria. CSI is very active there, and they're helping the pastors who are there, shepherding their flocks, trying to navigate this stuff. And it's really, really horrible stuff. I mean, you're talking abductions, obviously people getting killed in the most extreme circumstances, but people taken off into different forms of slavery, believe it or not. It happens. And then when they're rescued, and CSI helps actively rescue these people out of these situations, then they're there and they help them rebuild their lives, rebuild the communities. That's what CSI is doing. They are really, really effective in what they do as well. And if you want to walk alongside those efforts, just go to csi-usa.org/quickstart, and you can give any amount there. It really helps the work they're doing. csi-usa.org/quickstart. We can't all be traveling around the globe to help people individually on our own, but we can help those who are actually there, like CSI, and you just go to csi-usa.org/quickstart. All right, going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And a popular YouTuber, Jesse Ridgway, known online as McJuggernuggets to millions of followers, announced this week that he and his wife, Ashley, made the decision to terminate their pregnancy after prenatal testing revealed the baby had Down syndrome. In a lengthy post on X, he wrote, "The choice was not made lightly. We are devastated. This has been extremely traumatic for both of us." There was a huge reaction online. Megan Basham wrote that, "Imagine the message you're sending right now to every person with Down syndrome around the world. You're telling them that their lives are not worth living." And Ben Zeisloft, who's a pro-life advocate, said, "This was the murder of your own child, an innocent baby made in the image of God." And Kristen Hawkins from Students for Life said, "I feel so bad for your child who you killed. He or she didn't deserve death because they would have had a more challenging life than others." Read that story and more over at cbnnews.com. And Billy, this has really kind of gone viral, and the pro-life community has been commenting on this. I've seen a lot of people reacting to this, and it was really disturbing to see kind of this public admission of the thought process going into this. And it really was just sort of, well, they're going to have a difficult life, and here's some stats. And so we just decided to kill this baby, this unborn child. It's really remarkable to me when you think about what words matter. They really do. And when you sit around and these progressives and a lot of people on the left talking about choice, and it just makes it seem like it's another life choice that we all bump into, and it's just as good or bad as the next choice. And so I think it leads people to then make decisions like this without really thinking about what it is they're actually doing. And I know that there would have been millions of Christians around the country who would have happily adopted that child.
Yeah. It's, this is one of those tough stories because it evokes so much emotion and frustration and anger because of the language that leads people to feel they have no other option.
Yeah.
The fact that, that the abortion rate for Down syndrome babies is like 90%, right? All of these things are horrific. But the one thing we do have to remember, there are a lot of people calling them evil and talking about this, and they're not wrong about the act of what happened. It is an evil act. It is tragic. It is horrific. It is based on the idea and the lie that people with Down syndrome have no value, right? That they don't matter. But part of me has wondered as I've navigated looking at social media the last 12 hours, the last 24 hours rather, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, do we need to have a posture where we're at least calling for prayer for these people? I mean, they clearly were led into this decision by others who gave them maybe misinformation. And I'm not dismissing what they did. I'm asking the question of what is our posture in response to it. And I think we need to watch that carefully.
Yeah, because how are we going to win them over? Maybe there's other people that follow them that are thinking of doing the same thing. And so if you use that kind of language, and I am all for pointed language, but we should do it in a way that makes them think about what they've done or makes others who are considering that think about that before they would make that choice, because ultimately we want people to turn away from this sort of decision. And so we have to think about what's the best way to do that. And I think using kind of the most exaggerated language is probably going to cause people just to retreat into tribes, and they're going to look for people who are all A-OK with abortion, and they'll probably just retreat into that tribe and tune out everything else from the outside. So 100% agree with you, Billy, that, we need to call out the action and the act that they took, without going too far down the line and just making it worse where, we get more tribalism and people sort of digging in, and the two sides just become further and further apart. We want to bring more people on to the side of protecting life in the womb and the life of the unborn, because they are valuable. They are made in the image of God. All of that is true, and killing them is evil. But society has fooled and blinded many, many, many people into thinking that it's just a choice. So we need to be praying for that. All right, we're going to go over to the focus story now. And as you mentioned there, Billy, a Christian singer, recently revealed a miracle she experienced. Tell me about this.
Yeah, this one's interesting. Her name is Zahriya Zachary. Zahriya Zachary, and she made a big splash on the entertainment front recently with some songs. One of those songs is Stay. She was nominated for a K-Love Award. And we had a chance to talk with her on the red carpet there at the K-Love Fan Awards. And she talked about a lot of different things, but one of the things that came up was the fact that she was once supernaturally healed from depression. We asked a lot of the people on the carpet, like, what's the most amazing way you've seen God work supernaturally in your life? And she immediately talked about this moment, the biggest way that God had really worked for her. And she said it was about 4 or 5 years ago. She was, really struggling, and that God came through in an incredible way, and that she was completely healed of it.
So what are some of the details of this miracle healing that she went through?
This is interesting because she said it was clinical depression, which is obviously very serious. And she said it was one of the more profound moments of her life that she can't explain. She said, but I know that I'm living and walking in the miracle of it, and I feel the generosity of God in it because he didn't have to do it the way he did. And she said it was an instantaneous healing, which is what convinced her that it was miraculous, and it was dramatic. And she said, I was at a worship night, and I was actually leading worship, and I got prayed for, and I literally fell out onto the ground for probably a solid half hour and just got up and was like, I don't know what happened. It felt like it got ripped out of my chest by God, and it was really profound to get up, and I actually felt lighter, and I've never felt that same dark shadow ever since then, not to say that I haven't had hard days. And she said that, like, basically she was knocked out on the ground for half an hour. Like, she got up after being prayed for and it was gone. Like, the depression was gone. And she said that she had all these medical tests after that were radically different from the tests she had before this happened. And that was really the evidence for her that something happened, that God worked in this incredible, incredible way. And that darkness just completely dissipated.
And so why does it matter when somebody of note like this, a Christian singer or somebody who's got some sort of notoriety, when they share these personal stories?
Everybody has a story, but I think a lot of people are afraid to share supernatural stories. We had Ainsley Earhart from Fox News on, and she shared a natural story that she had faced when she was struggling with something. I think it's hard for people, but when you have prominence and you're willing to do that, it really opens the door to some pretty amazing things, mainly inspiring other people to share their story when they've had something incredible happen. So these are simple stories, but look, we did a survey with American Bible Society recently, and we found that 48% of Americans say that something supernatural happened when they prayed, that there was a supernatural miracle that happened. That's literally 1 in 2 Americans almost saying that. So people have these experiences. They're often just afraid. And so when people share like this, it opens people up.
Yeah, it really does, because it sort of tills the ground so that someone else can share it and know that, all right, well, if this person shared it and they didn't get ridiculed out of the building, then maybe I can share my story too. And so it definitely opens the ground and softens the ground for other people to jump in and know that the waters are just fine and that they can share as well what God's doing in their life. And, fear of man is one of those things that we can say, oh, we know we shouldn't be afraid of what man thinks, but everybody has an area in their life where you don't really want to say something or do something because of how other people are going to react to it. And at the end of the day, it is silly. Honestly, it's frustrating whenever I find myself in that kind of mode. And I'm like, it's so frustrating that I would be kind of wimpy on this particular thing because I'm worried about what some random stranger out there might think. And, ultimately, we should be playing to an audience of one and worried about what God thinks. And it's easier said than done. It sounds so easy, but it really isn't. And so I'm glad when people like her share her story and let us know when God is doing something good in our lives. Because I think about the 10 lepers and only one comes back, right? And says, hey, and Jesus is like, well, where's the rest of them? Weren't there 10? And it's like, we do that so many times, right? We don't talk about the things that God has done in our lives, and we really should.
Agreed. Yeah, we have to have that openness, because it's the thing that really, sometimes it's the difference between people actually having inspiration to continue on in their own lives. I mean, there's so much difficulty that people face. So I love when people are willing to be vulnerable and speak up.
Yeah, and you never know how God is going to use your story in someone else's life. A lot of times we might never find out, but you do hear a lot of times somebody remembering something very little that you said, and they'll come back and say, remember when you said, I don't even remember. But God uses that, and the Spirit works in amazing ways that we can't even fathom. So definitely something to consider as we go about this week, maybe being a little more bold in talking about what God has done in our lives. So appreciate you bringing that one to the podcast today. And we're going to head over to the main thing now. And more than 600 drones and dozens of missiles rained down on Ukraine this week, damaging homes and businesses, and now even a church. Well, CBN's George Thomas has the story of the pastor there who is speaking out after this round of attacks. That conversation is today's main thing.
Pastor Anatoly Kalyuzhny tells CBN News he's amazed his church's main worship center wasn't completely destroyed.
It's a miracle. Honestly, when I saw our worship building, I was full of joy, because I understand it's a great miracle. 15 meters from my worship center was big explosion.
On Tuesday, Russia unleashed 656 drones and 73 missiles in one of the largest aerial assaults of the war, striking 29 locations across Kyiv. Among the targets, Pastor Kalyuzhny's New Life Church. A missile slammed into the church complex, heavily damaging the Sunday school building, a recreation area for teenagers, and several church offices.
Everything is destroyed, no windows.
The attack was the third massive Russian bombardment of Kyiv in less than 3 weeks, killing 22 civilians and injuring 138 others. Ukraine responded Wednesday by hitting President Putin's hometown in St. Petersburg with hundreds of drones. The Russian barrage comes as President Zelensky asks the Trump administration for more Patriot interceptors, warning Ukraine is running low on the only air defense system capable of stopping Russia's ballistic missiles. Despite the massive aerial assault, some analysts say Russia's military continues to face challenges on the battlefield. A new report claims that for the first time since October 2023, Russian forces lost more territory than they captured.
They are not gaining territory. Ukraine is able to strike, as you see, increasingly deep into Russian territory on strategic energy and other targets.
And Russia's battlefield losses continue to mount.
They have losses, 35,000 soldiers, Russian soldiers per month. Wow. And it's a huge number of losses.
They're losing troops faster than they can replace them.
As casualties rise, Moscow is searching for new ways to fill its ranks through economic incentives for new recruits at home and seeking foreign fighters from Africa and Central Asia. The recruitment push comes as reports suggest some Russian officials are warning Putin that the war is placing growing strain on the country's economy.
Already now, a significant number of the regions are in a state of bankruptcy, and Putin is leading Russia toward bankruptcy.
That has Democrats urging Republicans and the Trump administration to put the squeeze on Moscow.
We've had a bipartisan sanctions bill sitting on the Senate floor for a year and a half that would tighten the screws on the Russian economy, make it harder for them to fund the war.
Back at Pastor Kalyuzhny's church in Kyiv, the cleanup is already underway following Tuesday's attack. Now well into his fifth year, the war has failed to stop his congregation from carrying on their ministry.
From the first day of the war until now, we didn't miss any church service. Many people leave the Kyiv city, but our church is very active during all of this time.
CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas joins us now in the studio. George, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
thanks for
welcome.
your reporting.
Sure.
If they're not making any gains strategically, now they're targeting civilians, civilian residences, etc. What's the strategy? Do they have a strategy?
Well, I mean, they're hurting. I mean, a most recent, a very prestigious Andrew journal, a Russian journal that is funded by the Kremlin, came out with a report just this month that basically said under the current military conditions, there is no way that Russian President Vladimir Putin can achieve the goals that he wants with Ukraine. That is taking over the entire country. And they also know that in the last year and a half, the United States, along with European allies, have managed to, in essence, outmaneuver as well as provide the resources, the technical knowledge, the intelligence wherewithal, the military capability to, in essence, fend off this Russian aggressive attacks. And then the summer is coming up. Zelensky's troops continue to, incredible amounts of damage across the country. Just imagine today, in retaliation for Tuesday's attack, over 700 Ukrainian drones flew from Kyiv, over 700 miles, targeting St. Petersburg. That is huge, way across the country, across their air defense capabilities. So Putin is hurting. And also from an economic standpoint, the Russian financial institutions are telling Putin, listen, you continue this as you want to go along this way, it's not going to do much for the economy as well.
How can he keep this up? You said, I believe in your report, up to maybe 30,000 soldiers. Did you say a month they're losing?
30,000 to 40,000. That's what President Zelensky said in the CBS Face the Nation report. I mean, look, we don't know if those are actually dead or those who have been taken off the battlefield. I mean, the Ukrainians over the last 5 years, Andrew, have managed to wage a war that is strategic, very smart, very creative, and they're continuing to take it to the Russians. Look, the Russians still hold, since 2022, they still hold about 20% of the country on the east coast of the country. But look, they have not managed to take over the entire country, and they're hemorrhaging, not just from an economic standpoint, but also from a human body standpoint as well.
Do you think this is a war folks in the United States have really just taken their eyes off of, kind of lost interest? It's been almost 5 years. Maybe you can understand that thinking, but this is still very significant what's going on.
It absolutely is. I mean, you've got the conflict over the Strait of Hormuz, right? You've got the conflict with Iran Lebanon. You've got midterm elections coming up in not too distant future. We've got other fires that are emerging in the Middle East between Lebanon and Israel and Hamas and so forth. And look, there is a segment within the American populace that says, we're tired of supporting what's going on in Ukraine. But kudos. I mean, this church, I just interviewed Pastor Anatoly yesterday. Already the cleanup is happening. It's just incredible. The wherewithal and the tenacity that the Ukrainians continue to show in the face of daily attacks, both by drones as well as ballistic missiles.
I mean, the Ukrainian church, their faith is really being tested, but they seem to really be rising up.
Absolutely. They said God, Pastor Anatoly said to me yesterday, Andrew, God is going to use this opportunity to grow the church. And I've seen it. I was there a couple of months ago. The church in Ukraine across the country is flourishing, and there's a revival that's taking place in the middle of war.
All right, appreciate that report there, George. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We got Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. This is something we all need a reminder of, especially when we're struggling in life.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about our God, this great, big, amazing God who's made the universe and the great depths of all of that. And we see it, but yet he cares about each and every one of us. And he's close to those especially who are the brokenhearted. And so that's a really great encouragement as we head into the weekend here. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. Lord willing, and that creek don't rise up on us. We'll be back here next week with more. God bless. We'll see you then.